Have you ever asked yourself, who is Zira, really? Is she just a follower of Scar, or is there a deeper secret behind her? What would drive someone to dedicate their entire life to vengeance? Why specifically would she build an army, raise a child that isn't hers, and live her whole life for a single dream? Could the secret be that she didn't just love Scar? No, she was his sister? If this theory holds, it would completely reshape the entire story and make every one of her actions far more understandable. If we look at Scar and Zira, we'll notice something very strange. There's no physical resemblance. Scar is known for his distinct color and scar, while Zira is much lighter, and her face shares no similar features with his. This might make us dismiss the idea that they're siblings, right? But in the world of The Lion King, appearance isn't everything. When you examine their behavior, their mindset, the charisma they possess, you'd feel like you're looking at two versions of the same mentality. Both harbor a deep hatred toward Mufasa's family and are willing to use any means to achieve their goals. They have the ability to control those around them through words, glances, their sharp demeanor. Scar managed to attract the hyenas, make them believe in him, and Zira did the same with the exiled lion. Both see themselves as rightful rulers, believing the throne was unjustly taken from them and that it's their right to reclaim it by any means necessary. Now, if we take this scenario seriously and assume Zira truly is Scar's sister, then all her motivations change. We always assumed she supported him as a leader she chose to follow. But if she's his sister, then her loyalty wasn't political, nor even out of mere allegiance. It was support rooted in blood, in a family bond, in a shared experience of being outcast and marginalized. When Scar was plotting the coup against Mufasa, Zira was with him. She was organizing, inciting, rallying, even ensuring the hyenas stayed on his side. Why? Because he wasn't just a king to her, he was her brother, and she saw in him her only hope of restoring their family's standing. And when Scar died, that's when the other side of her vengeance began. She didn't just grieve. She didn't retreat into isolation like the other defeated lion. No, she became a monster. Her entire life was built on one idea, that Simba was the cause. Zira saw with her own eyes how her brother was killed, watched as her family was humiliated, and decided her whole life would be a reaction to that moment. Instead of just mourning, she planted that idea in her children, especially Kovu, raising him to be her weapon against Mufasa's family. This leads us to the next point, the deep-seated hatred evident in her relationship with Simba. Her hostility wasn't just political. No, it was deeply personal. She didn't see him as a king, but as a murderer, the one who ended her brother's life and destroyed their family's future. To her, Mufasa was the reason Scar was marginalized, and Simba was the reason he was erased entirely. That's why her hatred for Simba wasn't just a power struggle. It was a deep-rooted loathing. Every moment of her life was spent thinking about revenge. Not just to win, but to avenge the brother who died before her eye. This wasn't just loyalty. No, it was family rage. As if she was fighting on behalf of every family member who'd been wronged, whose names had been buried beneath Mufasa and Simba's legacy. She believed Scar's glory had to be restored, not because he was king, but because he was her blood. Everything she did, building an army, raising Kovu, teaching her children hatred, was an attempt to reclaim that glory. As a sister, not just as a ruler. And in the midst of all this, what truly stands out is her profound sorrow. Zira isn't just a villain. No, she's a tragic figure. So heartbroken that her grief turned into violence. Her voice always carries a tone of pain, even when she's shouting or commanding. You can tell she speaks from a heart full of anguish, loneliness, and an unshakable sense of loss. Not only that, but Zira doesn't trust easily, something clear in her relationships with her followers. She doesn't truly love them. She sees them as tools. This stems from her belief that life has taken everything she ever loved and no one deserves her trust again. And just as Scar abandoned the hyenas in his final moments, Zira chose a similar path. She sacrificed everything, even her own children, to achieve her goal. Her ending was deeply tragic because she died carrying the same bitterness, the same hatred, the same thirst for revenge she started with. She refused reconciliation, refused to reach out, choosing to fall into the abyss rather than retreat. An ending that encapsulates not just the story of a villain, but of a broken sister, whose heart shattered when she lost the one she cherished most. What makes this theory compelling isn't just that it's logical given her actions, it's that it adds an entirely new dimension to the story. It makes us see Zira not as just another villain, but as a person with a history, with pain, with a reason behind her rage. It opens the door to new interpretations of old events, creating fresh empathy for a character many saw as nothing more than an adversary. There's something we really need to stop and think about. Zira wasn't just a villain or a follower of Scar. She had a cause. She believed that Scar's dream didn't die with him, and that his message still lived on. That's why she chose to be the one to carry it forward, using any means necessary. She raised her children, especially Kovu, to be symbols of that mission. From a young age, she taught him that the world was divided. Scar and his legacy represented good, and Mufasa and Simba represented evil. But when Kovu began to see the truth and stepped away from the path of hatred, Zira saw it as betrayal. A betrayal of her ideals, and of Scar himself. That's when everything started to fall apart. Her son turned away from her. Her dream unraveled, and Scar's memory faded before her eyes. And even when peace was offered, she refused it. She chose to fall, clinging to her anger, almost as if she believed that was her true destiny. But if this theory is true, that Zira was actually Scar's sister, it changes everything we thought we knew. She wasn't fighting for power. She was fighting for blood, for a legacy that was erased, and for a brother who was forgotten. Suddenly, all of her actions, her revenge, and even her hatred make much more sense. In the end, Zira wasn't just a villain. She was a victim of grief, betrayal, and a twisted dream she built around her brother. And maybe it's time we rethink our definition of good and evil. Because sometimes, even the villains have a story we've never heard.